What is going on, YouTubeverse? John Stanek from Johnny Radio here, bringing you another Viva La Vinyl classic album review, and it does not get much more classic than this, folks. The 1987 masterpiece by U2, The Joshua Tree. Gotta love this record, and one of the first words that comes to mind is timeless. And a lot of that has to do with the masterful production by Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois, two amazing producers in their own rights, who worked with such artists as Bob Dylan and David Bowie and the Talking Heads. But really, this being the fifth studio album by U2, who they were already making a huge name for themselves with, singles like Pride in the Name of Love and Sunday, Bloody Sunday. This album is what pushed them to the top, the biggest band in the world at the time, and this still being their best-selling album of all time, and for good reason. I mean, just from the opening track of Where the Streets Have No Name, you know you're in for something magical. The way that it just builds up with that organ sound, and then the Edge's guitar, which sounds like nothing before or after. He really created a sound with that reverb effect that is singular to him and to the band, and just sets you off on this journey. And then lyrically, Bono is really getting much more profound as a songwriter in general on this album. But I really feel like he, throughout this record, thematically, there's a lot of things that have to do with the desert. And, check out these images from Joshua Tree National Park in California. There's a Joshua tree right there. But in songs like Where the Streets Have No Name, where he's yearning for this kind of oasis in the middle of a desert, and then later in the album on songs like In God's Country, you hear a lot of that symbolism, a lot of that metaphorical oasis in the middle of a desert. And a lot of that has to do as well with how they were viewing America, sort of as outsiders, being from Ireland, also seeing two Americas, as Bono would explain in interviews, where at the time they had also been to places like Central America and Africa and seen kind of the darker side of America politically, even though they were in love with the country and what it stood for, and driving through those wide open spaces on their tours, they were just fascinated with American culture. And you really feel that musically as well, with a lot of kind of a blues and roots music, Americana. You feel all these kind of different influences on them musically, as well as them getting into their Irish roots, kind of an Irish folk music as well. You feel it throughout the record, and none more than the second song on this album, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, which actually has, out of all those different genres I just mentioned, even more so a gospel influence, which is really cool, because you hear the uplifting gospel lyrics in lyric lines like, you took the cross and all my shame, but then he follows that up with, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. So there's like a yearning throughout this album, as well as there being a darkness as well. With or Without You, which is my personal favorite song on this record, and I think one of the greatest ballads of all time, period, is such an amazing song because it's the same kind of thing. It's like yearning for something you can't have. And at the time, U2 becoming the biggest band in the world, Bono was having issues with his wife, Ali, with, trading off being this huge band with domestic responsibility. And that's really what that song is about. And that's really why it stands the test of time, because it's so emotional and comes straight from the heart. And I'm happy to say Bono and his wife are still happily married and got through that period. But man, what a beautiful song when you think about it. I often wonder now, knowing that, if the line, "and you give yourself away," is Bono trying to sing from Ali's perspective of seeing Bono like giving himself away to audiences when she'd rather have him at home. You know, you think of those things when you know some of the songwriting parallels. But man, just those three songs. I mean, let me just stop and say, this album has one of the greatest runs of 5 songs in a row of any album, period. It may be the best. This, A Rush of Blood to the Head by Coldplay, and Michael Jackson's Off the Wall come to mind right off the bat. Just one of the greatest A-sides of all time. You got those 3 songs I just mentioned, then Bullet the Blue Sky, which is just an incredible rocker that I think rocks harder and better than Sunday Bloody Sunday. Plus, it infuses this like, they were in El Salvador seeing these crazy things happen in Central America, and they just really just set that to music. An incredible song. And then following that up with Running to Standstill, which is just an underrated classic ballad of this band, which is about heroin abuse, a really deep subject, and beautiful piano, some beautiful harmonica, again, pulling some of that roots music of Americana, what built American music matched with what built Irish music. You can tell that these guys were just really kind of taking history and pushing it into the future. And that's what makes this album amazing, in my opinion. Even though side A is much stronger than side B, you've got amazing songs like In God's Country, I Trip Through Your Wires, the closer, Mothers of the Disappeared, which is also about the tragic things that were happening at the time politically in Central America, and literally, I mean, children were being slaughtered. I mean, just crazy things happening. And these guys were just putting it to music in such a way that was compelling, to where one of the things I gotta just say this, that I love about U2 is Bono especially is very political. I think he can't help it, but he does so in a way that tends to help the world. And I think U2 have really raised awareness for so many issues, but they often do so in ways that you don't really see coming, and they do it through music, which I think is a beautiful thing. And Mothers of the Disappeared is one such example, but just every song on this record is a classic, is a gem. I love Achtung Baby that much more. That's on my wall of perfect albums here. I think that's a perfect 10 out of 10. This one, it's just shy of that. If I had to give it a grade, I give it a 9.5 out of 10. It is a near perfect masterpiece. And the only reason I say that is because the second half kind of loses, tapers off for me in areas. Although, again, songs like Exit, one of the hardest rockers in U2's catalog towards the end of this album, is just so cool. I mean, I would have loved to have seen these guys on the Joshua Tree tour in 87 or in Rattle and Hum times. Of course, I was really only 9 years old at the time. And I remember seeing on MTV the videos for the singles and thinking, yeah, this is cool, but I didn't really get it at the time. Now, being an adult, this is adult music. This is music that, as I said at the beginning of this review, is timeless. And you just feel it as a human being, the yearning for Where the Streets Have No Name, whether you still haven't found what you're looking for, or you're with someone that you can't live with or without. This is an album for all people, and just must have. So thank you guys for listening to my review. I know that I probably went over time than I usually do, but this is an album that kind of requires that. It is one of the greatest ever, and you got to have it in your collection. So let me know what you think in the comments below. What is your favorite U2 album? As I mentioned, Achtung Baby's my favorite. Stick around because I'm going to do my top 5 U2 songs list tomorrow. It is U2 week here on Johnny Radio. So thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, Viva la Vinyl. So guys, thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and be sure to ring the bell for notifications so you can always see great quality content like you're seeing on the screen right now. Thank you so much for supporting Johnny Radio, and I'll see you soon.